So, as I slowly pull up our agenda. So I believe, without looking, our first order will be to, approval of agenda, approval of the May 8th minutes. So does anyone have any corrections to make for the May 8th minutes? Hey, anyone want to move to accept them?
I move.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Approved and seconded.
You gotta do it all. Okay.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. So John, I'm assuming I'll stand this to you for Tracy to sign.
Yeah, I'll get that to her.
Okay. All right, any members of the public interested in being heard? Okay, moving on. We have our library staff presentation. And Jason had
It's
to
just
leave.
called out of here. I don't know what for.
So I'll just skip to the next
Yeah,
item and then we'll go right back.
Okay.
This is an item, thanks to Jamie, I believe, that I'd like to add as a standing agenda item, at least for the next few months, which is to do a monthly icebreaker now that we have a number of new members. Just a way to get to know each other a little better. I'd be happy to switch off every month. I have a number of icebreakers over the years that I've gathered as well. But I thought for this month we could just do something a little library related. So I'd love to hear, and hopefully, we'll just do this pretty quickly, but a favorite library memory. Doesn't have to be the favorite, but a favorite library memory at any point in your life. So I'll start. And I can't believe I'm going to share this one. This is being recorded, but I would be very upset, I think, if any of our students did this now. But when I was in college, I hid out in the library overnight with a group of friends. And at like 2 a.m. we came out and played hide and seek and ran around the library. And that is not the best librarian or board member memory, but it is one of my favorites.
Wow.
And I'm immediately thinking, like, where was security?
Oh, we got caught.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh.
like 3. And kicked out and then, talked to. Now I'm sure he'd be arrested. So, yeah, I know. There is a gap there of security. So, and Jason, we're just briefly skipped into the next one and then we'll switch back to you. But I'd love to hear from anyone else who would love to share a favorite library memory.
Well, I wish I'd have thought of that because that's a great idea. I guess as a kid, we used to use the library as a place to hang out. So where there was no other place in town, we would just go there and cause trouble and try not to get kicked out. And usually at 9 o'clock, they threw us out. Kept us off the street till then. That was our social space. Not as good as yours, though.
Well, I knew this question was coming.
Yeah.
I have 2 that immediately pop to mind, and they are from my time working in the library in youth services. And one is, they're both very similar, and you'll know why. One is this tiny, tiny, tiny little person running full speed. They're probably in college now. Full speed into the children's room. I'm sitting at the desk. They don't care who all's around. They're just looking at me and they go, Miss Jamie, Miss Jamie, Miss Jamie, I made poo-poo in the potty. Like really loudly. And I'm just like, awesome, buddy. And just like the fact that they couldn't wait to share that information with me of all people and didn't care who heard it. I rode on that high for like weeks. And then another was, we were doing a story time, Thanksgiving story time and craft. And the ask was, make a beautiful picture about something that you're thankful for. And I'm walking around like, oh, what do you have? Oh, your family and food and all that. I get to this one little boy, and he's very, very focused and hard at work, and he goes, it says, I am thankful for snakes. and this beautiful picture of a snake, and I was just like, oh my gosh, yes. Like so earnest and serious about it. So those have stuck with me for, gosh, it's probably about 15 years.
Rihanna, do you have anything on this line?
Yeah, so if it's picking up any background noise, just let me know. But the memory, there was a library near where I grew up that was brand new built. John, it's the Cerritos Library, if you recognize the name. But they had like a sculpture garden that people would like go take like professional photographs at, and they had a giant an entire wall was just like an aquarium, and it had like fish and eels, and so it was like a really beautiful library. And so like it was more just like being there and walking around. It was almost like, yeah, just the structure itself was really impressive, and they have like fountains outside, and it was just a really gorgeous library. So going there was always like a good memory for me.
That's awesome. I've got so many, but one is way back when I worked in, you made me think of this because of academia, and it was when I worked in an academic library, and it's like a story of just surprisingly, I don't know, what people are thinking or not thinking. So we had group study rooms in this library, just like many do, and this is for students, of course. And I worked at Cal Berkeley, and they have a very well-respected MBA program. So, you know, I kind of worked there under the assumption that most of these students were pretty smart. There was a whole group of students, a bunch of them, first of all, overcrowding a study room. Not to study, they were celebrating a friend's birthday. That's fine. Except that they had a birthday cake with lit candles. And we're like, do you not see an issue with this? Anyway, we laughed a little bit, and then we well, I mean, they blew out the candles and
Keep them on.
keep them out. Like, you can't do that. First of all, you're not even using it. There's people that actually need a study room. But I was just amazed that there was no thought that fire in a building that's basically Kindle, with all those books and everything around, like that didn't occur to anybody that it was a fire hazard.
They're probably running.
MBA students at Cal Berkeley. That's my story.
They're probably running an insurance company right now.
Yeah, they maybe are. Anyway, we can.
Loss prevention.
So.
Tracy, I know you can't hear us or you can't speak, but if you have one you want to put in the chat, please feel free. Jason, I know you're in here to share with us, but if you have a memory that came to mind and you'd like to share, please feel free.
Well, I grew up with my best friend his mom was a librarian, so we would end up spending quite a bit of time after school just hanging around the library reading comic books.
Those are good stories, not cynical stories.
It's because I'm not at work right
But
now.
it makes me laugh still.
Yeah.
I see that. Oh. I just heard from Catherine, and unfortunately she will not be able to join us tonight.
Yes, we know.
All right. So would anyone want to do this, before we move on to you, Jason, would anyone want to volunteer to do the icebreaker next month? If not, I'm happy to.
I'll do it since it's mine.
No, I like it a lot. Okay, now back to staff presentation.
Okay. Well, I got
First of all, sorry, but I think a lot of you know Jason because he was acting director until I got here. But just in case, this is Jason Merrill, and his while he did an outstanding job, his real role is department head for technical services in our computer lab, and so that's what he's actually here to talk about today.
So my team actually covers multiple different areas. I've got, I'm going to start off just basically walking through the process of what happens in the back, and then we'll talk a little bit about the computer lab. First, the purchasing team, acquisitions, falls underneath technical services. We have 3 individuals who receive, purchase, invoice, and make sure that all the vendors are properly taken care of for purchasing books. If there are problems with the book, they get back to the vendor and make sure that things are taken care of correctly. So they receive the books, they receive any kind of item that we get. Once they receive it, then it goes on to our cataloging team. We have a team of 4 actual catalogers, that's their official title. We do have a few that are helping right now with that process. Total team right now is 11 who help with cataloging and making sure that information's in the computer. Right here's a sample. I pulled up something new that we just got in the library to show a little bit of the record. All this information has to be put in. It's not just something that we can go out and grab from one place, but there are several pieces that we have to go in and type in and make sure that that is in there correctly so that people can find it. My favorite part of the record actually as we get down here to the subjects, 650s, so it's lines that specifically say, here's what a little bit about what the book is and what's inside. So after the catalogers get all that information in, the book then has to, book or item, goes into our jacketing and processing area. They basically take the book and put a cover on it, put a tag in it that's an RFID so that all our machines around here, the building can read it. They put a barcode and make sure that it's completely ready for the shelf. Once they're done with it, then they hand it off and it ends up on the shelf. Any problems along the way, then it goes back to the team that can fix the issue with the book or item. So that's a little bit of the backside of the house with things, but the big part of my team right now is actually the computer lab. We have 2 brand new computer lab members who are really great right now. We've been working hard to make sure that all of our machines are up and running as much as possible. The new members have been able to provide the service in the computer lab so that the technical support can actually work on computers. Our total computer lab team consists of our catalogers, our jacketing team, which normally, if they work in the back, not very often do they actually work at a computer lab desk, but our team does here, which is unique and very special. I really enjoy people that work there because they aren't scared to try things. We have a lot of questions that come in, people who don't use computers, don't know technology, and that's the first place that they get help. And our computer lab team, we have a coordinator who coordinates the schedule, and everybody spends at least 2 or 3 hours a week in there. We do have a few that spend up to 12, so they get to know the people who come and go. Are there any questions?
So I guess going back to the record, I mean, I would love to remember the computer lab too, but I'm curious because I remember during our budget conversation, we were talking about pre-processing.
Yep.
So what would that change for your team if that goes through?
Pre-processing, actually, we've been doing quite a bit. It's been helpful. It cuts down the amount of time that an item has to be touched. So acquisitions purchases it, gets it in. Rather than it going to cataloging, it can then jump a step and just be reviewed, make sure all the tags, the covers, and everything are on correctly. The companies are actually putting the tags, the barcodes, and things on for us, so it's just basically being checked to be put on the shelf. So It is a process that cuts down the amount of time it has to sit on a shelf for somebody to look at it, get the information in, and get it on.
So we've been introducing this since a little bit before I was here, first with children. So they are all children's materials are fully pre-processed now. And before that, we could have materials sitting back here waiting for cataloging and jacketing and all this physical handling for sometimes up to 6 months, which is unreasonable because it's for the public. So we can't have stuff sitting back here. So now with pre-processing children's materials, pretty much don't sit here at all. And there's a rare occasion where there's something where there's an error and it has to sit back until they fix it. But most things go pretty much unpacked when they're delivered and on the shelf within a day or two.
It's the special items that we have to spend time working on.
Yeah, and then the adult fiction collection has been the next one that we've just started doing, which is a huge collection as well. So we'll reduce the backlogs there as well, and then we'll gradually introduce pretty much everything else in our system. Most libraries do this now.
Doesn't mean that necessarily we will have no work for the people. It's more that they can focus on these special items.
Or spend more time in the lab. We're going to be introducing computer classes for the public, which we haven't done.
Yep.
So with new staff that Jason's hired this year that was budgeted for last year, they're on board already and working. And then the existing staff would logically, sorry, I was reading Tracy's, would logically have capacity to work more and help with classes there as well. So there's a lot there. And even beyond that, a lot of them already do it, but they could volunteer. Volunteer meaning, as long as their workload is okay, they can help with outreach events. So there's plenty of opportunity for everyone.
Half the team currently does that. We have several that will go out and spend time with Lillian at different events.
That's awesome.
That's great that everyone works in the computer lab. I mean, hopefully they enjoy it.
It's good in general, I think, because a lot of traditionally libraries, people that work in technical services and do cataloging and things tend to stay in the back. So I think the public interaction is good because you know what people are asking you and working with the public gives you a different perspective than not. So I think it helps everybody with the customer experience. Something that was already created here, I didn't create that, but I think that's something I would stand by for long term.
It's been a great benefit for not just staff, but the public. Many times are able to give us the feedback that we need for stuff that's going on back here, because they're in a place where they see and talk.
How big's your team?
I have 15 on the team, 14, 15.
Total staff, yeah.
Total staff. So. Other questions?
You answered them.
That was gonna be my next one too. Computer classes.
Oh,
Yeah, they're coming next month.
coming up, yeah. All right, well, thank you, Jason, for coming. I know you're a familiar face here.
Oh, it's great to hear. And I think it's great to see a record too.
Well, and all that information that's in that record, you don't see it on the public side. You just see the book that you're looking for.
How's the baby doing?
Doing very well.
Good.
All right, awesome. Well, I mean, feel free to stick around if you want, or go, but
I'm gonna jump out.
yep, I know, you got plenty to do.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Jason.
you.
Okay, moving on. Actually, do you mind pulling back up the chat? I'd love to see what Tracy
Oh.
shared before.
It's right here. Let me get rid of it. Hang on. I'll make this easier. There you go. Another Pennsylvania. I don't know if you
I
know
was,
that.
I didn't
I
know
love
that.
that, Tracy. That's great. Well, thanks for sharing, everyone, on that one. Also, please feel free to have a cookie or so, and please feel free as well. Alright, so moving on.
Can I just take some home?
Yes.
I'll get it at the end.
We'll hook you up with something.
So I asked John about possibilities of a shared drive. That's our next agenda item, especially because we have so many digital items now. If there's a central location that we can all have access to. I know Jeff can't be here, so I'm not sure if you have any updates on that.
I asked Jeff about that, and he said there's essentially for a reason with the way boards and commissions run, that there is not
Okay.
a digital housing place because everything's supposed to be here.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean you can't communicate that way, but
Okay.
there's not a repository or any kind of drive in order to share documents. Basically, I think the logic is if you're doing that has to be publicly available.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, that's good to know.
Is that a conversation stopper then, if it needs to be subject to like Cora requests?
Pretty much.
A couple years ago, we were involved with an outside group and they were posting their documents to Slack.
Yeah.
And the board had access, was given access to Slack. And the city indicated that was a violation of open records because you could in essence conduct the meeting without letting the city know or the citizens know about it. So that we ended up having to sever those relationships just so we'd be legally okay.
It's kind of under the presumption that all board work is done at the meeting, so anything outside the public would have to know or be included. I guess that's where it's coming from.
Okay. So we all have access to the minutes, but beyond that.
Yeah, I think like Cynthia brought up in the sense which I think logically makes sense to have, you know, as some documents, like even last month or the one before, where the board was basically working through a statement to go to council through a Google Drive, but we were in a meeting, it was fine, but if that had been done offline, the public would have to be included. I guess I'm saying something you know, but I just, that's how it was explained to me.
Well, I understand the logic behind that, and Tracy, I think that just means we'll have to continue to ask you to email things like the bylaws and really depend on that. I hope that changes, but I understand that is how it is.
I guess I wanted to understand again, like what is the need that is not being fully met by the status quo?
For me, it would be convenient to have an easy place, really I was thinking about it again when we were having a hard time looking at finding the Mosher and Empson procedures that we had worked on, finding the bylaws. So those sorts of documents that pertain to board business, I thought would be nice to live in an easily accessible digital place. But I don't think that's too much of a barrier. I just think we'll have to ask Tracy for them.
Maybe there's another way to skin that cat because the library just serves as the receptacle of that information. You store everything else. Store that.
I know, we can be the gatekeeper and all that, which we already are.
Great. Well, let's move on from that one. And I just wanted to do a quick membership update. First, we really wanted just to thank Mark for his service to the board. You've taken on so much for the last couple of years, and I think really got this board to have momentum. So it's much appreciated.
It was the talent at the table that did it, not me, but.
Oh no, you will be missed, and we will be losing a lot of knowledge next month when you leave. So thank you, Mark. Wanted to make sure that was on record. And then just to give everyone else here an update, John, Jamie, and I met with the 2 candidates for new board positions, and we passed both names on to council. And so hopefully we will be hearing back from them soon.
When do they get voted on? This month? No.
Tracy, do you remember, I think we asked that question. I know you'll have to chat to me.
My memory is June, because they needed the memo by May 30th. I don't know if we have any more clarification from that. I mean, I sure hope so, because I know you won't be here starting next month.
June 20th should be when council makes the decision, and then we should find out their decision the day after.
Right.
So by the next board meeting,
Right. Well, no.
and
hopefully
they might
have.
be here.
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tracy. Any comments on that agenda item before we move on? Okay. Well, let's continue on to old business then. So I have, and I'm sorry, Brianna, that I'm not able to pass this to you. This is the updates I made to the board bylaws. That random A is because the PDF formatting was very odd on this document, so I couldn't get rid of it. But really what I did was took out the section about the secretary. This is based on our conversation last time, and changed what I hope was all mentions of the chair. Chairman to chair, and vice chairman to vice chair. But I just wanted to see if there were other corrections that anyone sees.
Not trying to rub it in.
No. Tell me. I did this
I
very
should
quickly.
interpret this as there is no section 3, Article 2, Section 3.
Yeah,
Did it just
yeah.
throw the numbering
Yeah, it just
off?
threw the numbering off.
It is an inadvertent deletion.
So that will have to be changed. Thanks. Section 4.
Was that the only change?
Yep, they were just taking out the secretary and changing the name of chairman and vice chairman.
So, underneath officers, are you intending to say that the secretary is an officer?
Nope, that needs to be crossed out. Thank you. So it needs to read that the officers shall consist of a chair and a vice chair. Right now, we do have a liaison for Friends of the Library, and we tried without it, which did not work out well. But I didn't want to add any. I don't want to lock us into anything, so I thought it would be better to not add that to the bylaws, especially if the nature of that group changes or our membership changes.
There's an annual meeting?
Yes, which is the meeting, the second meeting of the board after city council's annual appointment of new members shall be designated as the annual meeting. So it is the one we had when it was after you all both joined, when we voted on officers. It was officially our annual meeting. And my understanding is because these two new, possibly two new members coming in are replacements, that will not be the annual meeting. But I guess this is something I should clarify. Do you, Tracy, you might know this actually. My understanding was that when Jamie Rihanna joined, that was the annual meeting, and this is just replacing 2 members that have left. So we will have an annual meeting in approximately a year, not in
Right.
the fall. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so I believe then,
She said, yes, I can't remember the timing, but I believe September would be the
Okay.
next appointment, and then the annual meeting would be around November.
okay, yeah, that makes
That
sense.
kind of fits with your timing a little bit.
Yeah.
so.
Okay, great.
I have a question that's kind of picking a
Yeah.
linguistic nit here. So, because the secretary is signing the minutes, is there an obligation from the city in terms of the secretary being a member of the committee? Or does that not count? I mean, is there, all I'm searching for here is there some statutory requirement that says because the secretary signs the minutes, there's some legal requirement in that?
Legal in that,
They have to be a member of the committee, or it doesn't matter?
I don't, that's.
I don't have an opinion, I
Yeah,
just
you're
don't
just
know.
asking. I am pretty confident that's not a requirement because most boards and commissions, the secretary is actually a staff member,
Okay.
not an actual member of the commission or board.
And I do believe that, I'm trying to remember the process or trying to find where I wrote it, and I might actually have to go back and look in the minutes. But I believe this now goes to legal as well, in updated bylaws.
Yes, this will have to
So-
go legal, even if you just add a period. Any change has to go through legal,
How do you know how?
would be my point.
So I'm assuming that that would be something considered then, or at least it will have gone through that review. In answer to
Well,
your
that-
question.
You would assume they would catch it if it was an issue. I mean,
Yeah.
Maybe you can send it on with that question, saying it says, do we treat the roles and responsibilities of the secretary correctly in this regard? See what they say. They'll get back to you in a year and a half and we'll deal with it in the meantime.
So I will correct the, what JV and Mark pointed out, I'll take off secretary under Article 2 officers. I'll reorder the numbering, and then, John, do you know how this gets to legal?
Through me
Through
or
you.
Tracy.
Okay, so I'll
Yeah.
send it then to you.
Yeah, I would send it to us and maybe point out what was changed.
Okay. Okay, and then I'll also add amended by library board onto today's date. 6/12. Wait, my understanding is that we will want to vote on this now that we've discussed it. So I move to, for the following corrections to be added to the bylaws, to remove the role of secretary and to change the titles of chairman and vice chairman to chair and vice chair. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, everyone in favor?
Clarifying point for
Yes.
the record, we're not moving to remove the role of secretary.
We are moving to amend the minutes by, thank you. Tracy, the motion should read as we are moving to amend the bylaws by removing the role of secretary and changing the names of chairman and vice chairman.
We're recommending to remove secretary as an elected
Officer.
We still have a role of secretary, it's just shifting to Tracy.
Okay, so the
Right?
update, yes, so the motion should read, sorry Tracy, we are electing to remove the role of secretary from the board officers.
There we go.
Okay,
And committee membership.
and committee membership, yeah.
Now I can second.
Tracy, were you able to get that? Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna miss all this.
Okay, so you're the second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, motion passes. Thanks. Okay, so now, next agenda item. Okay, follow up city's culture and recreation initiative. This is just in case there are any updates.
There's not much except for, and Rihanna, you won't have this, but I passed out not this, but under your agenda, there's a handout of basically what legal wrote up is sort of a simplified version of the question that's come up more than once here and in every other board or commission, which is what can they do, what can we do or not do when it comes to a ballot initiative and campaigning. And so this one-page document is what legal wrote up, and communications was gonna, make this a little bit cleaner and presentable, I guess, in some way, but we lost Rihanna. Anyway, so that's what I passed out. The long and short of it is really, until there actually is something on a ballot and the ballot's out there, as a board, you can campaign and do whatever you want, as can I. Once it's on the ballot, then you can't campaign as a board member.
Oh,
And neither can I.
Okay.
You can do it as on your own time as a
Right.
resident of Longmont. But you
Okay.
can't go out there and say, hey, as a board member, I think you should vote yes on whatever. But you can say, as a resident of Longmont, I think you should vote yes. That's my opinion.
That part
Yeah.
I've known. It's the part prior that before it lands on a
Yeah,
ballot.
before, there doesn't seem to be any real
You
rules.
can
Mhm. So you could go
say,
talk to
I'm
people.
on the board and here's this thing we're trying to get off the ground. You might see it pop up again
Exactly.
in November.
That's the way I understand the way this
Wow.
reads.
Okie doke.
Or at least the gist of it. And the question also came up in one of these meetings of whether someone from legal could actually come visit meetings. And I think that they're still planning to do that. In fact, I think they're at one of the other ones tonight. So
That's great.
hopefully at a future meeting they can come and we can still make sure we know. I mean, obviously if they come too late, it's not gonna matter. So I'm hoping in July or August, someone can come and really make sure, or if this isn't clear enough on this document, to make it more clear somehow.
I think there is an important sentence in here, John. It's in the lower part in item number 1, and it's the last sentence. It says, however, boards and commissions may take formal action to express an opinion on an issue such as passing a resolution. So the board can make its feelings known publicly, but it seems like it has to make it known as a group as opposed to individual.
As an individual, so,
I mean, that's just my
Yeah.
interpretation of
right,
what I'm
so
reading.
if that's if that's correct, then as a board, something can be published or stated as a library board, I guess. And these are still things to maybe get some clarity on, I guess, but, before we run out of time. But that's, there's not really any other updates to the tax initiative other than that. And I think they had draft language. I heard about some draft ballot language
Oh,
with
they
the
did?
library. Yeah, so, I believe the intent for sure, at least as the library is concerned, is it will be on the ballot. And there's other pending issues with recreation and other things that are going on that seem to be a moving target, but the library doesn't appear to be a moving target.
Here's something I like. Number 2, that we can distribute, we don't have to distribute a factual summary as long as we are not
Yep.
overtly taking a stance.
Yeah, and that's something as a library director I can do too. I mean, I could go around and do all kinds of informational sessions on what it means,
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, it's not, I'm just
Facts.
thinking, not even just this initiative, but other potential future items.
Right.
Where the public's really going to need some education.
Yep.
Before we can expect an action.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. So I wonder if it does make it to a ballot and it's language that the board could support. If somehow you could summarize the feasibility study, since it's an independent study, it's not drawing conclusions, and get that out into the public.
I mean, me not being the lawyer aside, I would say the feasibility study was already presented to the city and to council, and council accepted it for whatever that means. So I feel like it's officially been accepted by the city, so it should be able to be presented as.
I think it's public record.
It's also
It was-
public record. Yeah.
It was presented at a public meeting.
But it's not taking, as I recall, it's not taking a position on funding. It's just saying the library is not doing well.
Right.
And here the
It's
not
factual.
doing well.
Yeah. It's
And it's factual.
it's comparing to other libraries, all that stuff. It's saying that this is where you should probably be funded for a library of this size, for a community of this size. These are the services you have. That's where they came to the preferred level of service. That might be where there's more opinion. Because you could argue, one could argue, I guess, like
You probably want a legal opinion on that.
Yeah.
But it seems that it's saying there's a statement of underfunding, but it's not saying how much funding the voters should fund.
Correct.
That makes sense.
Right.
It's not.
On an initiative or whatever.
No.
So if
Correct.
So if the opportunity arose, the board might consider how to get that out into the public, or the city might consider
Right.
how to get that out.
Right.
Well, I am writing down questions as we talk for legal, for when they are able to make it to this meeting,
Okay.
which there's really 2 so far. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
This is helpful, and this is really great to know prior to having the title fixed, that the FCPA does not apply. Okay, other discussion points or questions on that?
I do want to acknowledge and thank Mark for coming to the open forum
Yes.
and that support, and also recognizing there were a couple friends that came and spoke,
Right.
volunteers, which I thought was worthwhile. Well, it certainly was. It actually even made the paper. They
That
felt
was
like that
some
was
story.
a headline of the meeting.
I thought
Even though it was really meters, I thought.
they carried more weight.
Okay, that's what I heard.
Yes.
I mean, in all honesty, I think it carried more weight than anything I said, because they were new voices to the argument, and they came in and they didn't, have a history of trying to influence or the council.
Right.
Just an honest exchange of thoughts. Did you motivate them to come?
Well, we talked about it at the last Friends meeting.
I think it's great because they
showed up.
They showed up, they didn't announce themselves, they just signed up and.
They came to an earlier, when we were all there, I guess maybe a month or so ago, and I said, it would have been lovely if you said something. So maybe they decided to.
Well, if you run into them, I thought they did a great job.
Who was it? Was it Sharon and?
It was Carl and
Carla.
Linda. Is it Linda's wife?
Yeah.
I mean, they did a great
Well,
job.
Carla will speak up and very
They both
articulate.
did
Both
a
of
very
them.
good job.
Oh, good. I was commenting because the media coverage that I read about, mentioned the library like this, and then everything else was about other stuff that took up time that evening,
Right.
which had nothing to do with the library.
Right.
So I was curious, like, how much were we actually able to speak?
Well, thank you, Mark, and
It
thanks
did
to
carry
the
weight,
friends.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cool.
huge.
I mean, it was an open forum night, so the council could ask questions as well as receive questions. The council, had already heard my pitch before, so there weren't any questions, but they were asking questions of the couple, which I thought was great. Because that showed a level of engagement that I appreciate.
Do you remember any of the questions? I know I could go back and look at this. Curious.
I think their perspective was, as I recall it, which I'm not sure I'm doing them justice, was to indicate to council how important libraries were in their lives, throughout their lives. And
wow.
that they wanted to make sure that council was aware that the libraries are appreciated and that they need to be attended. That's my, yes, does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
You listened, right?
I did. Yeah, I watched the whole thing online.
That was painful. I know.
We're still.
This makes me want to go watch it. Well, that does make me wonder, if this is just a thought to hold for later. If we ever do decide to express an opinion on an issue such as passing a resolution and related to a ballot measure as a board, that was a theme that came up in almost all of our favorite memories of libraries, and those two people who shared what libraries have meant over the lifetime. So I think that is something to keep in mind as part of a possible future statement.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say it still matters. I know it's come up because there's been specific reasons, to get in front of council recently, but it doesn't just stop there. I think the more council and the public hear for that advocacy, the better. Particularly, if this is to move forward on the ballot, I think, that's gold right there.
I know that there will be a time in the future when we'll want to make more space for having a strategic conversation, but from what I heard at the meetings that I did attend, I doubt that the largest opposition or just lack of engagement will be around whether the library is important and deserves to be funded adequately. I anticipate that what we are going to want to, or someone's going to want to proactively address is this the way to do it? Is it through taxes? Is it through this specific proposal? And is it coming at the expense of something else? In other words, if I vote to support the library, is it a vote against something else? Is it a good or?
Right.
So, any kind of educating that we wind up doing in the community, I would want to address those 2 points.
Those are good points. I also think the other thing that can happen is, and of course we'll see what happens with this measure, what is fixed to the ballot, is there's so many things that are being done well here from the staff. And so if people are not familiar with other library systems, they may not see a problem. Kind of the perpetual issue.
Right. Like things seem great.
Why have more?
Right.
Hey, any other comments or updates surrounding this initiative? Okay, we're flying through our agenda tonight.
Can I ask what happens next? Like, what's the next piece of this?
For us as a board, I think we just wait. I think we actively wait. Let me say that.
It would be nice, and I don't know, when an actual ballot language is written, to be able to sort of have some eyes on it, but I don't really know how that works. Just to have But I think as far as outside of that, yeah, there's not, except to wait and see that it's on there. And then when it is, then certainly, we know it's gonna be for sure.
Yeah, I have no experience with that. I don't know if it comes to, I would assume the city staff presents it to council, and council says,
Yeah.
okay, I like this, and that's the ta-da moment, okay, ta-da, this is gonna go on the ballot. Or if there's one more loop in that process where, they entertain comments from the public, and then it's the ta-da moment that,
Good, yeah, I don't know.
I just don't know how they do it.
Well, hopefully at our next meeting, we'll be a little over a month if we stay on schedule. And so if we have a regular meeting with John and Jeff here, hopefully we can find out a little bit more in that time.
Yeah, I hope by that time in July, there's some more information on what's gonna happen, because, there's deadlines.
Yeah.
Mhm.
they have-
August is, they
Right.
have to know whether
Yeah.
it's on the ballot there or
Right.
not, for sure, so.
Yeah, I would encourage the board to weigh in at that point, and, I don't know what kind of notice will come down through you or through Jeff as to, hey, tonight's the night kind of thing, but
Yeah,
I would encourage the board to get up and say something.
Yeah, especially seeing that the word can take formal action. I think I think there would be a number of ways to do that, or at least a couple of ways to do that. So that would be, I think, another discussion for this group to have if we decide to.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's kind of dropping in and out, so.
Other comments or questions on this one? Okay. Let's move on for now. Can always get back if we need to. Old business, our next item is Empson and Mosher funds. And John, I believe you're gonna let us know how much.
I did, and so I looked into that. So the Mosher Fund, and that was set up as a trust that we can spend on the interest earned only. And currently, what that amount is about $588,000 that we are eligible to spend. So that's the balance in that sense. The actual balance of that whole fund is $1 million and something, but that's the spendable amount. So that's Mosher. Empson, which I believe has been designated for some specific library-related materials or services.
Research material.
I think it's research, but that's about 125. And then there's a much smaller fund. What's the name of it? Anyway, it's about 5,000, and that has really no parameters around how it can be spent around. And then of course there's the library general fund, which is basically the friends. That's what that is. So, and that's 100 and some thousand, but that varies because basically the friends have their money, but when we put in requests, then they basically pay into that fund and then we spend from it.
Okay, well, we had discussed, I know we had worked on procedures as a group. We had discussed not pursuing that actively right now, but I'd like to keep this, returning to this, maybe not every meeting, but fairly regularly, and then when time is appropriate, maybe go back to those procedures and try to send them off once more, or to remind people that we have sent them. But for right now, for tonight, any other comments or questions on these?
The Mosher Trust, that's a restricted fund, or
So
are there
it's,
restrictions on spending that?
there's kind of, as far as what we spend it on, you mean?
Yes.
It's generic enough to say library programming, but they have a kind of a clause in there that says, you know, particularly that would benefit those who are blind or deaf.
Oh.
But it's also, it's a pretty broad statement. So, you know,
So there
I
was,
think they just had some interest in that. So, the only thing to date that I intend to spend that from is on an exterior book drop, and that does provide that specifically to that group if you think about it, because if you're on that side and there's no book drop, then you have to know where to go. So it does provide an ADA kind of, if you think about it broadly,
Yes,
ADA,
accessibility.
yeah, it's an accessibility issue to have a book drop there, so that's how I was able to get that appropriated, or will be.
yeah, there was something that didn't, I can remember with that. So some of the history on that is, because of the specific designation for the funds, somewhere along the line, we went back to the city, the board went back to the city and asked if there was still a trustee of the fund out there that we could lobby to get the usage broadened, to make it, you know, easier to apply the money. And I think the message came back at that time was that there's no active trustee involved with the funds. That was established so long ago that the heirs that established it, any of their managers or trustees or people that would watch over the fund, they're gone. So
Right.
so then we were told that you had more latitude with the money than specifically those two designations.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, no one who gave it to the library is around. I don't know how that, you know.
Well, I think that's
It's up to somebody's interpretation, right? I mean.
you know, at the time, I think there was a concern that if you spend it, somebody's gonna come back and say, no, you can't spend it on that, you've gotta give it back. And then, of course, that's not a great situation. So
Right, I think-
just trying to get some guidance
Yeah.
on it.
In at least in its simpler terms, where, you know, because it says on library programming, I do know it means I can't use that to fund a new position,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't.
Or probably
Well,
a capital
I could
expense.
probably use, or a capital. Well, except that the book drop is.
Seemed like it was more one-time
New construction.
expenses as
Yeah,
opposed to
that's the thing,
ongoing expenses.
It's yeah, exactly. I think it's one time. So it's
Mm.
there's not much written there about it. So it's, you know, it'd be nice to have it in some ways clarified to be more broad than, or somehow who decides on, if I propose to spend from something,
Right.
who's telling me whether I can or can't?
Somebody's got to own that.
Well,
you know.
actually, I think the guy that will tell you that is Jim Golden, because the board
Yeah.
can make a recommendation, and then that has to go to the city to write, I think the mayor has to sign the check or something. So somebody
They
at
have to
the
approve the
city,
appropriation of it.
somebody at the city has to bless the expense.
Yeah, that's true.
So to me, that's where the city's legal department gets a chance to
Yeah.
weigh in. If you're offline, then somebody's gonna
Yeah.
say, we're not writing a check.
Yeah.
Okay. Other comments or questions before moving on? Okay, we'll return to this periodically then. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to reports and information items. And we have library director report up first.
So I'm gonna go through highlights from this month. Or sorry, May. Figured that out when I said that. We don't have two highlights yet. So, screen showing over there. Tracy, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I can, well, you got everyone can see it, right? So let's do this old-fashioned presentation. So in May, actually, so children's in May, Asian American Pacific Highlander Heritage Month. We did some programming there, which was pretty successful. We got some good patron feedback on that as well, as far as writing their appreciation through some comments about doing programming specifically to that month. Our tween club, some of this is ongoing, but that we do every month, but just some highlights from there. Summer reading. Were you at the kickoff party? The almost didn't happen kickoff party. So I was there and I gave up.
I went home, I came back,
Yeah.
and then we
So our summer reading kickoff party was at Sunset Pool, and it was raining a little bit, but more so it was lightning. And every time there was a lightning strike,
thunder.
we had to wait 20 minutes, and if it didn't come back, there was all this timing. And anyway, they all got in. It was supposed to be from 5:30 to 7:30. They got in around 6:30, so the kids and everybody got about an hour of swim time and stuff to kick off the party. So we're in full swing now. The last time I checked with Claire, who you met last time, she said we already had about 1,500 registrations for kids' summer reading. We're doing adult summer reading this year as well, by the way, which you can do yourself if you want. It's kind of fun. It's called Textual Pursuit. So if you like trivia, you can check off things there. I don't know if that's indicated in the adult area or not, but so we're full swing summer reading. Some other programs that we did here that were already represented. Some of our ongoing. One of the big things, I don't know if you know, is our Lego club that's once a month. A lot of turnout there for that. Every month. We do it after hours. I think at some point my children's librarian would like to change that just for ease of delivering the program, but it's usually successful. So children's is usually, as usual, is doing a lot. One thing, just to let you know this, because this is really programming highlights, but I want to let you know we had 2 staff get new job opportunities, which is great for them within children's. So we're recruiting. One of them was part-time, like 12, 14 hours, so staff are covering that mostly on the floor shifts. But the other one was almost full-time, 3/4 time, so we're recruiting for that now. Good for them, but a little bit poor timing for us when we just started summer reading to have to lose children's staff, but they're hanging in there. So moving on, so adult, we had a really good program on a Holocaust presentation that was done, a really good turnout. It was actually the same night as the Friends meeting, I remember, because I also wanted to see this present.
Yeah.
But they had 61 attendees for an adult program is pretty good, actually, just for, they don't do a lot of big programs. So when we do, and we get that kind of turnout, it's good. This was an artistic presentation on the Holocaust, so interpretations through music or literature, I think. Very well received. And then we did an art program with some adults. I think it's still displayed upstairs. You can see there's about a half dozen or so artwork that was crafted based off this Diego Rivera program.
Oh, and I used to work for the Museo de las Americas, going
Yeah,
and doing
we partnered
programming at
with them.
libraries.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's neat.
So that went off really well. And I think they did another one, or they are doing another one with teens. I can't remember if it happened or is happening. It's the same thing, but just with teens. This one was for adults. And then our gaming, Spanish-speaking group, our 2 book clubs are doing very well. In fact, one of them was tonight. That's why we're in here. And then board game exchange, so people can trade out boards. We've had good board game programming already, kind of what we call passive programming, where there's really no library staff involved. It's just games are out and people can play and do whatever they want to do. And then just some numbers for adults. You can see the number of programming we did. 15 different programs or so, and a total attendance of about 246. Outreach, busy as usual. Cinco de Mayo, of course, was the biggest thing. I don't know if you went to Cinco de Mayo. I was there all day. Big event. When we say 400, when Lillian writes, and she'll come to one of these, 425 stats, she means interactions with people. So it's, as long as we talk to somebody about the library, we count it, whether it's a longer question or just what are your hours. But it's an interaction. So that was a good, fun, and very busy day. And moving on, so our center is a newer outreach program that Lillian's doing. So 65 people there, which is good. The Youth Summit, she was there, and Heidi, our marketing and communications person for the library, also was there for that. A little bit smaller turnout, but effective.
It's my daughter. On the right, the upper right-hand corner.
Oh, with the back turn?
Yeah,
This
Yeah.
one?
Which one?
yeah, that one.
Oh, wow.
I
That's
assume
nice.
with the Longmont
How
t-shirt on.
Yes.
I don't know why.
That's so neat.
Well, so your daughter was there, so that's good.
It was during the book, The Friends sale.
Okay,
So
you're right, it
We had
was.
some volunteers,
Yeah.
young, energetic,
Yeah,
show up. They were looking for that.
Oh.
They were signed up to volunteer
good.
at the youth summit.
yeah,
So we,
because it was
we
over in
let
the
'em
Civic
go.
Center Mall, what we
Right.
call it, right, like inside there.
Oh, yeah.
but I
but-
did see Lillian
Yeah, and she was,
all dressed up
yeah.
I don't think
with
I've
lots to carry.
never seen her not dressed up, I think.
Right.
William?
You're
It's
probably
because
right.
I go to the
She's always,
programs.
she's always ready to
amazing.
talk about the library.
Oh, yeah. She's,
She's prepared.
She did a great job this Saturday at the park, the Colores program.
oh, yeah. And she's gonna be, we just signed up to be this weekend is the Juneteenth celebration for the city. She'll be there as well. We just got signed up for that. She figured out how to work her schedule to do it, so. Intercambio, she's been working with them for a while. They came, she does outreach with them, and then she brought them in all for a tour and took them grand tour of the library, so. And I happened to be just walking out, and then I got to meet everybody, so that was pretty fun. For them, I think. I was really just wanting to go get a cup of coffee, to be honest. But no, it was delightful.
Giving
Like,
out autographs.
yeah, autographs, yeah. Something like that. And then outreach numbers, which are always usually pretty big, although Cinco de Mayo helps in this month. But 1,000 touches of conversation with somebody. That's separate just from the parks that we do. So she kind of recorded that separately this month. With some of the rain, you can see a couple had to get canceled. Sometimes, one of the times we tried to just switch it and have it be here inside, but it's just so hard because people show up there and it's when you don't know what the weather is going to be. But that's just the way it goes with outreach. I mean, it happens in the winter too, if there's an outdoor event. And then some more numbers there. This just puts it in a different format. And then upcoming in June, this is some bigger June outreach coming up. And June, oh no, she does have June too. So she updated this, so that's good. So those are the highlights for May.
Do you mind going back to the summer reading, the pool slide picture? That's fire. In that upper left corner, is that the pool after people had already waited an hour?
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive
Oh, those
They
kids
waited.
didn't care.
that they waited an hour.
That place was full.
Yeah, they
This is
waited.
great.
So I went there. I wanted to be there at least for a little bit, so I got there around 5:30, and I waited for probably 45 minutes or so. but I also, I took the opportunity to go for a run because I live where I could run there. So I ran, and then it was looking really bad. And I'm like, I'm gonna go home. Like, if you guys get in, that's great, but I'm not getting hailed on. So I went home.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but when I was there, everyone was waiting, the kids were playing, just, you know.
I gotta say something that was really cool. We live right behind there, so we were there on time, and there was a huge line to get in. We stood on that line. It felt like a long time until someone finally came out and said, we just have to hit pause on this. You can go, you can stay, but like you can't stay here because of the threat of the lightning.
Yeah.
So that whole line had to disperse, and I took my daughter home. She was very disappointed. We waited, and it was about an hour maybe, or just under, and we came back, and they were letting people in. And I mean, like, I don't know if you've had this experience, especially as a parent, like you're gonna go do the thing in the evening, and you get there, and if something goes wrong and you have to step away from the thing, you're done. Like, you're not going back. And the fact that so many people left and came back, that's how committed they were to following through the event.
Yeah.
And then the super cool thing was the table was set up, those smiling, what is the name of that individual who's smiling, laughing at the camera on the left-hand side?
Here?
No, you were on the right photo,
Here.
but the
Oh.
person on the left?
Yeah, oh, that's Stephanie, one
Okay.
of our children's librarians.
So-
And Carly works for us too. She's a library technician part-time.
And Claire was there,
And Claire's
and I
right
think
here.
Oliver was there.
Yep, Oliver's here.
And these kids, they knew them, they walked up to them and talked to them.
Yeah.
The library staff knew who they were, recognized, so there were like these genuine conversations happening. That was just super cool because it was busy and then a little tiny bit chaotic for a bit, but like those interactions hammered home to me how ingrained the library staff are in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well done. This is a success.
Yeah.
It's a success. So good kickoff.
Yeah, it was in the end, and you're right. It's a good group. They know everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate you sharing that.
I mean, y'all are getting 20 teams for team firms. That's really good.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen unless I think they have this relationship.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
Great.
So that's that update, and then I have still yet to kind of get this in a dashboard. I've been playing around with old things, but I wanted to give you just a couple updates on our action plan that we talked about. So, in the area of security, the only thing we're actually waiting on here is the securing access to staff areas, which is where we are. This would be badge doors. We don't have, and so I'm waiting to hear back on that. But the lighting is done. That got finished last month.
Great.
In the atrium, it's super nice and bright now. You can actually see. We hired our full-time campus security attendant in just 3 weeks ago or so. So this person works. Part of that deal was they work mostly over at the Memorial Building in Roosevelt Park, but Sundays they're here, and we didn't have a security presence here on Sundays. So his name is John. He's doing a great job. He came from a security background. So that we have. And the security cameras, new and updated cameras started to get installed last week. I think they might still be working on some of them. So we're getting some work done on this patron and staff security. I'm not going to go through every single thing here. I just want to point out some things that were moving along or even completed in some way. I'll move through a couple of these things here, but like our brochure is done, but we actually just translated that into Spanish as well now. So now it's really done, like in that sense. Of course, the sorter's been done for a while, that was on here. Let's see. I think those are the things I wanted to just touch on, mostly security things. So I'm still working on getting this in a format where it's not in this document. You kind of have a visual of where things are, and I can provide some notes on where they are as well. You know, it's like in progress or why, or if it's halted to what, you know, almost like a project management type of board type of thing. So, so I'll hopefully maybe by next month I'll have that, but it's not that we're not paying attention to this. I just don't have any really good viewable format. So director report, I think that's about, well, one other thing I just want to let you know, because the Friends group is aware of this because they were written to as well, but I wanted the board to know, with it being Pride Month, it always brings out some people that have issues with that. So I received an email communication from somebody objecting to our upcoming Rainbow Story Time that we've done every year since 2015. And I wrote back and, you know, thanked them for writing and everything, and gave them our program policy, and if they wanted to object, they had to fill out a formal request for reconsideration form. It's the same one we use for our collections if someone wants something removed. I have yet to see that come in from this person.
Okay.
So I only responded the once basically to let them know that, but I think unless I get that, I don't have any intention of responding to that, particularly given what they wrote to me the second time. And then another group of people, I don't really know where it's coming from, but some group put together a letter again about the Rainbow Story Time. This basically just states their objection to it. They got a bunch of signatures to say they object to it. They're not actually asking me to cancel it, they're just saying they object to it. And in that case, just because they got signatures and, you know, kind of made it a little bit more formal in the sense that it was mailed to both myself and the Friends group via certified mail, blah, blah, blah. So I did reach out to city, you know, departments, legal and communications, and just wanted some thoughts on whether I should do anything or not. And the advice was, if they didn't come in to fill out a request for reconsideration, there's really nothing I need to say. And I'm fine with that. And should they do that, I'm prepared to respond to that. But, you know, they're also running out of time. But because it's coming up in next week or the week after. So, but I wanted the board just to know that kind of stuff does go on. Today I did receive a formal request for reconsideration on 2 books that were on display in our not in the children's, but as you enter it, we always have new book displays there. They were appropriately on the teen display. They were teen appropriate books. A parent of a 7-year-old didn't like those being on display. So I just got that today, and I'm working with my children's librarian and my teen librarian, and we'll respond to that accordingly. And I have no problem saying that I have no intention of taking those off of the display. They were on a teen display. It was meant for teens. We have a lot of things that are on display, and not everyone is going to like them, and plenty of people do. And in fact, the person that wrote to me made somewhat of a scene about it in person to my staff. And so, you know, it finally, you know, resolved in the sense that they left. But, you know, there's kind of no need for that kind of thing. But, you know, it's always hard when you're kind of feeling attacked in a way. But so I just wanted the board to know that those things are kind of going on. I think I obviously wasn't here last year in June, but I will say, at least from John's opinion, that the political climate around LGBTQ issues this year was a little more heightened than maybe it has been in previous years, although there's always people that have an issue with it. And I think there's always somebody that has something to say. And we always respond accordingly and professionally, and I will do that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us on that. I am so pleased that there is a program policy as well as a collections policy. And I would really love for the board to support your efforts. I think it's just so important now and moving forward. So if there, it doesn't sound like there is anything tangible that we could do at this point. But if that changes, I would really love to hear what it is so we can, of course we'd have to be in agreement as a board, but from my perspective, we want to support.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing for me is to know, first of all, that the board is aware of that, so that should somebody come to you as a board, you know that this was sent to me.
Right.
As the library director and as the library, we stand behind the programs and collections that we have. We've talked about here before, and another, well, at least here, various public library things like intellectual freedom and the Bill of Rights and everything that informs what we do. So, as long as there's if the board can support that as that you already have, then there's really nothing to do. I'm always happy, especially when I do get a formal request that I have to respond to, I'm always happy to share that with the board, just so you know how I'm responding. And so I will do that with this.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There's somewhere on the website that does detail what that policy is or what the procedure is for the staff then evaluating that request. I'd love to be able to uphold that. If it comes up in conversation with a community member.
Yeah, so as far as both the collection development, if that's what we call it, I can't remember if it's collection development or management. Anyway, collection policy and then the programming and display policy are it's one and the same. It's called the display program. They're both on the website.
Okay.
And they both indicate the request for reconsideration in the format and how you have to go about it. Should someone want to do that, they have to obtain the form in the library in person. They can send it back differently, like this person scanned it to email and sent it back, but they have to fill out that particular form. It states in any of those policies that if something is challenged, that a committee will be formed. We don't define purposely in that what the committee is because it depends on what's being challenged.
Sure.
In this case, when it comes to children and teen materials, my children and teen librarian are going to be involved in my committee because that makes sense for those materials. I'm not going to bring in somebody that doesn't know that collection side. So the only other challenge I've received since I've been here was a couple months ago for a film. I don't even remember if I brought it up here because it was, to me, fairly basic. Someone checked out an R-rated DVD, and as you know, DVDs on the case is printed with the rating and why it's rated that way. So that one I did basically speak with my adult services librarian and our librarian that does selection for all our adult DVDs, and we discussed it, and then I wrote up a draft and we collaborated on it until it was good to go. But basically in that case, I think the person that was objecting was just surprised that they were seeing a movie that had content in there, and but if it's in the case of a film, it's stated. In fact, the very things they objected to were actually in the description on the case. So it was a little bit easier to respond to in that sense. I understand from a public point of view that, you can pick up a book and you don't really know the content in there until you look at it or read it. In the case of a film, it's there for you. It says what the rating is and it tells you why it's rated. So that one was a little more of a no-brainer to me, but this one's a little bit different in that sense. And by the way, this person is not saying that they think that these books should be removed from our collection. They just objected to them being on display. So I'll share my response with you once I have something written.
And yeah, if there is, a lot of that is specific to June, but if there are other challenges that come up, if you don't mind sharing them, that would be great.
And hopefully they're few and far between. It comes up and it's sometimes seasonal, or it depends if there's some controversy over a new book that everyone gets up in arms, and then people start coming out about that, and then it goes quiet for a long time. that's my director update for you all.
Thanks. Any other questions for John before we move on to the Friends update? Right. Jamie, you are up.
So I attended the last Friends meeting and we went over the proceeds from the sale. It's also the end of the Friends yearly cycle, their fiscal year. So we did look at really some high level, expenses, income, different sources. We did touch on the coming initiative, the last meeting where a couple of board members attended. There's still kind of just like that continued conversation about like what's next and what's the update. And I believe John spoke the opportunity to come out to the open forum. We talked about the shop, how one of the things that I didn't know that I was kind of amazed to learn is that the majority of the money that the Friends take in does not come from the book sales, it comes from the bookshop. And it is a pretty penny. And I know that Carla and that team work really hard all the time to keep things moving and just the sheer volume of donations that get taken in. It's quite impressive. What else? We talked about these maps that
Topographic maps that
right.
we are taking out of our collection.
But that the Friends may want to explore opportunities to sell those to benefit the library. And I think I brought up the idea of like maybe doing an auction and building something of just like a little fundraiser around it, and maybe even earmarking those proceeds for a specific use. But that was just, we were just kind of talking at that point, so nothing decided yet. We approve, the Friends approve, I don't vote, I don't know why I'm saying we, but they approved funding some requests from the library for additional purchases, iPads.
Yeah, we requested.
Not the iPads, the cases and the accoutrements, or more iPads.
It was iPads. It was 2 iPads for the one for the circulation desk to replace one that's been wonky, and these are used for Friends book sale purchases only. And then the other one was to add one at our info desk, the smaller desk, on the other side as you come in from the U side on your right, so that they can also sell things at that desk. So they approved that, and I think that was the only request for that month.
They reviewed their annual meeting that they held in a space here in the library. They seemed fine with how that went. There were 17 people at that meeting. They had more than 300 members, active members, so, if they just wanted to have a little meeting, then they accomplished that, but I thought they maybe missed an opportunity there. I'll bring that back around. And the last thing was, they were also discussing what their limitations might be as a body in advocating for policy, lobbying, campaigning. And so the treasurer or somebody on the board was going to check with their legal representative and confirm what their bylaws and nonprofit status allow them to do. But very clearly interested in championing whatever the library needs.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie.
They have a lot of money in their cash reserve at this point, you know. Do they report on that?
They did, but it wasn't, I could be misremembering, but what was presented wasn't like 100% updated yet because of something else that hadn't hit, but they were projecting it to be, yeah, it's healthy. It's healthy.
So things that they're working through whatever difficulties there are out there, and they're still making money, it sounds like.
They're making money. I mean, we didn't make as much this past sale as we did the one before. I think, you know, one of the things with having such a large chunk of programming depend on a group like the Friends is that it's not as predictable. You don't know how great the sale's gonna do or not do. You know, one of the things that comes up a lot is legacy planning, although they're not using that term, but like writing stuff down and making sure that, you know, more than one person knows where things are and how things are done. Because like if somebody, their language, not mine, if somebody takes a fall, then who's gonna run the bookshop? Who's gonna run, you know, this thing or that thing?
Yeah, they had a woman there, I don't know whether she's still there or not, but she did everything.
Well, they just lost the person who did their online sales for like the valuable books that wind up getting donated. Somebody would pull those out and sell them on eBay and knew how to navigate all of that. And that person's no longer wanting to fill that role. So there's a bit of a gap there. So yeah, and there was a very lively conversation on email about the water that has gotten into the parking garage from the recent rains, and it seems like books for now are safe. They're elevated on pallets, but you know, could this be a situation where someone gets sick because of mold growth, or if the books become damaged because of just the humidity down there, and what can be done about it, that sort of thing. So
I think that I'm very happy to see the budget request for this year include programming, so not too dependent on the Friends. And I did send up to council as well as the key city staff our the support of the library's budget and called out a few items, including that one. But I think if that does not go through this year, that as a board, as an advisory board, we really need to continue to let council know that this is, there's some major problems with depending on a group like this for funding.
right, because for example, there may be some programs, innovative programs, not even programs that are happening now, but say staff or John wants to introduce something next year to be able to work towards something. It's gonna be harder to earmark funds to launch something new because you don't have a guarantee that they're gonna be there. So again, it's just kind of like, to me, it's like treading water. Like, are we really going to be, is the library really gonna be able to grow in the programming directions that it might want to grow in? Yeah, you get it. I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the Friends update? Okay, so I'm gonna move on to our last agenda item, or to our last item under reports and information. I'd like to add this one as a standing item. I didn't have a better name for it. But I think my hope is that this will be open to anyone on the board to share at just information relevant to the profession of librarianship, to libraries within the area, and so on. I know I keep up a lot, even though I keep up more on the academic side, and I think a number of us do. But for this one, I actually asked John if he wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about the new library that opened in Greeley.
That's right, yeah. So I had the opportunity, it's part of Weld County Library System, but their branch in Greeley, which they named LINC, L-I-N-C, which stands for Library Innovation Center. And it's pretty fascinating as a library. They basically, part of it was a library and part of it was the Greeley Tribune. And then, so they basically gutted stuff and renovated the whole thing. But what's interesting about it is probably half or more than half of it is creative spaces, and less of it is books. I mean, there's certainly a number of them there. It's all there, and other things, study rooms, everything you think about is in the traditional library, but the creative spaces is pretty significant. There's a couple of different computer labs. There's 2 different maker spaces. One is the quote-unquote wet maker space, and the other one's dry. So the wet one can involve things involving painting or things like that. And it's built in a way that has a drain in the middle of the floor, and they can just hose things down at the end, whatever. So it makes it easy. The other one is they call the dry one, which they got donated. I don't know what they're going to do with this, but what are they called? Looms for weaving? Is that what you weave with looms?
Yeah.
Anyway, UNC donated more than anyone could ever want, I think. They're like stacked. It was kind of amazing. But that room does more than that. It's also woodworking, so there's like all kinds of things to cut wood with, circular saws and things like that if you're a woodworker. And so it's just pretty interesting. And then they have a whole studio center where you can record or do with green screen also, but also a studio lab where you can do podcasts or things that has appropriate sound quality and things like that. And then they have upstairs, which is practically a museum. It's practically a technology museum. And in fact, they worked with the person that did the Denver Children's Museum to create some of that space. So, and if you've ever been to Meow Wolf in Denver, or Santa Fe for that matter, where it started, it's an interactive museum. It's kind of like that. So you can crawl around, you can climb from the first floor to the second floor on this netting. There's no shortage of stuff to play with. Of course, those of us that were there, it was a big statewide directors meeting, so our first questions were all on liability and what if a kid gets hurt, but we can't help ourselves. We take the fun out of it right away. But it's pretty fascinating. If for some reason you find yourself in Greeley or you just want to make a trip, I would check it out. Just to see what, a different concept. They did this in Colorado Springs years ago, if you ever went down there for some reason, called 21C. And they took an old MCI building, if you remember MCI, I'm old enough like I am, but telecommunications company. Anyway, they had this building vacant forever, and they basically have even less books than Link has. There's like a very small section that has books, and the rest of it's all creative spaces. And some of it's for adults, some of it's for teens. It's really, that's what it's for. And so that's kind of what Link is too, in a way, although I would say there's more collections there because it does serve as a central library-ish as well. Anyway, it's better to see than have me describe it to you. So, Greeley's not too far. I think it's worth a peek, particularly thinking of, potential if Longmont were to get a library, how crazy would we want to go in thinking of different spaces and that are outside of a traditional model. I think they offer some interesting things.
That was quite a big community commitment for that, wasn't it? Was it
with
30 million?
It was about 30 some million, yeah, which they were able to pay for. There was no, because they had a lot of reserves of money in their district as the library district. They had reserves, so they had the money to do it.
So they are a district.
High Plains is the district.
Oh, okay, High Plains.
They're a part of High Plains, so Greeley's within there, obviously, but it used to be Weldon County Library before they became a district, and then they took on some other little
Yeah,
counties.
that was the grand vision, that or something like it, just haven't been able to get
Yeah.
there to do it.
I'm wondering how it's different from the space in Boulder, Building 61.
Well, they, because theirs is the woodworking shop in Boulder,
Well,
at
they,
Boulder
it's,
Public.
they,
Is
they
that
call it a maker space. It's got
Yeah.
sewing machines, it's
Yeah.
got
It's
3D printers.
Yeah, I think this is similar in a sense, but it's more spread out.
Yeah.
And they put them in different rooms, and there's a whole bunch of wild technology. Like when I talked about this museum aspect, like one of the things you can do, it's like a whole like aerodynamics, to learn about aerodynamics. And so you basically, they have them where you can make a paper airplane, and then it goes into this device, into like
It's like a wind.
a case, yeah, and you launch it. You hit a button and it launches, and then you can see where it flies and learn about aerodynamics that way. So there's so yes, Jamie, there's all that similar stuff. So stuff that you think about now that we have maker spaces everywhere. I mean, in this case, like that whole dry maker space and all the woodworking materials is extensive, and they hired somebody that it knows all that equipment. Like their expertise is in woodworking, and they know how to use all the equipment. And of course, again, we were asking like, well, can anyone just come in and like, I want to use the circular side of it? It's like, well, no, you have to be trained.
Right.
You can't use it alone until you've been trained. There's all kinds of parameters around it, which makes sense. But yeah, so I think there's probably some similarities, but.
And then I just found out about these anything
Oh yeah.
libraries.
They are down. Okay, so they have a great audio collection. They are.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain.
Where are
around
they?
them.
They're like
It's
southeast of us.
It's Adams
Adams
County, and I don't know.
They were created like 15 years ago, I want to say.
So it's only in Adams County, Colorado,
Yeah.
nowhere else in the
Correct.
Yeah, it's a rebranding. It was
Oh,
a
okay.
rebranding of
It
Adams
was
County.
it was Adams
I
County
believe.
Library,
Okay.
and then they formed as a district. I would say at least 15. I think it's been more, and they rebranded themselves completely. So Adams County is a lot of it's industrial, but it's grown a lot, right? It includes Thornton and North Glen.
Oh,
So it's not all industrial, but then you also get into some remote farming areas. So it's a really interesting county. And they had no library support as Adams County Library at the time. And they rebranded. The director at the time came up. I don't know how they came up with anything, but that's what they're known as. And so they do a lot of creative stuff. And in fact, at this meeting I was talking with their new director. Because they are currently planning, or it's already done, I don't know when it'll be built, but they are doing a library rec center complex
Interesting.
in partnership with the city of Thornton,
Okay.
because they're a district, so they're not Thornton City, so it's some kind of partnership there. But the idea of that complex, which we've talked about here a little bit, which could be on the ballot, so they're doing some stuff there, and they have will have a new nature library, which is really fascinating. I think it's partially outdoor, but they've been known ever since then they do a lot of creative things, even with their programming. They do like beer festivals, they do all kinds of stuff, music festivals, yeah.
it's not like a third party, like corporate.
Nope, it's
co-op.
it's basically Adams County Library District, but they're branded as anything.
Okay.
The language they use is always interesting to me
Yes.
because they will use the term, I forget what they are, but like customers and like very like
The
different
staffing
language.
titles, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think
It's
that could be
different enough to
confusing.
make me suspicious.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd ask John rather than read. Look it up myself.
No,
but
it's a good.
I
But
love
yes,
seeing
yeah.
all these different
Yeah.
imaginations of what libraries could be now, you know? Thank you.
Yeah, so my hope is that we can keep looking at other examples. I think especially as this group, supports or doesn't support, hopefully supports any initiatives. Right, let's move on then. So we're almost at 9. Any comments from the library board?
So just open in general?
Yeah.
I was thinking from the shared drive conversation, I get why, I get the explanation for why we might not be able to do that, but I do support the idea and the thought behind it. But it kind of made me think of something else, like similar vein, different topic. On my, the other city board that I previously served on, I think they just gave it to all board members, but we had city emails for board communication. So like they would send them meeting minutes, and if someone wanted to like have us on a radio show to talk about the Parks and Rec board, or like wanted to interview us, or ask if we wanted kind of like sending the event information and being like, can anyone come attend this and speak, or like any of those communications would be like on the city email, and they would have the only thing they would have us do before like giving us the email account was like, I think we had to do like a 1 hour online, like just like here's about open public records and what that looks like. So we did like a little online training before we got the email account, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if that's like something we could do as just a board, or if that's something the whole city, like all the boards would have to do. But, and also I know like some people in that model, they would either like, sometimes they didn't like checking another separate account specifically just for their volunteer city board. And so they would like forward messages or, so I don't know if that's something that people would even be interested in the first place, but I just wanted to throw it out there as an idea or possibility. So.
Thank you. I think that's an interesting idea. I'm wondering if that's something that we want to, I don't know, it might be worth sharing with our city council liaison in a future meeting, because I don't know if there's much we could do as a singular board, but I think we could pass that feedback to the city as a whole.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, unless others have thoughts on that as well. Right, thanks. Other comments from the library board members?
Well, I wanted to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to work with you all. I think it's been a great run for me, and I feel very confident that the library's in good hands going forward. So I look forward to seeing the progress as it just happens when it happens.
Well, we will look forward to your continued support as a citizen. but really, thank you. I mean, also just for, as I've come on board, making me feel welcome and a part of this and being supportive in that way. I do appreciate that. And your knowledge, just, you know a lot, so it always helps when things come up.
Right, but
Well, sometimes you ask the right questions that maybe somebody didn't think of because of that, I think. So anyway, I do appreciate that. Don't be a stranger.
thank you. I'll still have my library card.
You're always welcome to be a member of the public. If you
Oh,
would like to be
thank
part
you.
of these
Thank
meetings.
you for that. Thank you for that.
Public invited to be heard is limited to 5 minutes.
Thank you for that.
Well, thanks again, Mark. You really will be missed. Wait, before we adjourn, let's go ahead and make sure we have the next meeting date set. I don't believe there are any holiday overlaps with the third Monday in July, which would be the 17th. Is there anything I'm missing?
There's no holiday or anything that should interfere with our normal day.
Tracy, let's make sure that's on the minutes then, the 17th. Okay, well, at this point, I move to adjourn. Well, I don't move because we don't do that in this meeting. We will adjourn at 8:51.
Thank you.